Everyone is telling you this is about a Japanese warship irritating Beijing, a routine freedom of navigation transit, business as usual in the Taiwan Strait. That framing is wrong, and the gap between what you're being told and what is actually happening is the size of a world war. I have spent the last 48 hours cross-referencing reporting from Stars and Stripes, the South China Morning Post, Naval News, and the Wikipedia track timeline of the 2025-2026 China-Japan diplomatic crisis, and what those data streams show when read together, rather than in isolation, is a picture fundamentally different from what you are being told. Here is what happened. On April 17th, the Japanese Maritime Self-Defense Force destroyer JS Ikazuchi entered the Taiwan Strait at 4:02 in the morning. It did not exit until 5:50 that evening. 14 hours, not a transit, a demonstration of presence, stretched across an entire working day, broadcast to every satellite and sensor in the region, and the ship sailed with its eyes transponder, the automatic identification beacon that tells the world exactly where a vessel is, switched off, dark, silent, deliberate. China scrambled J-20 stealth fighters and CH-4 attack drones to shadow it. They released the footage on state television. The message was, "We see everything you do." Japan's message back was louder. And to understand it, you need to start not with the destroyer, but with the date. April 17th is not a random day in the Taiwan Strait. April 17th, 1895, is the date Japan forced a defeated Qing dynasty to sign the Treaty of Shimonoseki, the treaty that ceded Taiwan to Japanese colonial rule for the next 50 years. Every historian in Beijing knows this date. Every planner in the Eastern Theater Command knows this date. Tokyo knew they knew. The Ikazuchi didn't just sail through the strait on April 17th. It sailed through on the 131st anniversary of the moment China lost Taiwan to Japan. That single choice changed everything. Here is why. Within 96 hours of that transit, China's aircraft carrier Liaoning was threading through the same strait. China's newest drone carrier, the Type 076 assault ship, Sichuan, a vessel that didn't even exist in operational form, 12 months ago was departing Shanghai for the South China Sea. 2 Chinese warships were conducting publicized exercises in the Yokuei Channel, threading between Japan's southern islands, and 17,000 troops from 7 nations, including 1,400 Japanese soldiers, firing anti-ship missiles on foreign soil for the first time since the Second World War, were already deploying to the Philippines for the largest Balikatan exercise in history. This is not a diplomatic spat. This is a synchronized escalation sequence across the most dangerous theater on Earth, and it is moving faster than anyone in the mainstream is telling you. Let's go beneath the headline. The Taiwan Strait is 180 kilometers wide at its narrowest point. That is not a vast ocean expanse. That is the distance from Washington, D.C. to Philadelphia, measured in water, contested airspace, and the accumulated strategic weight of 3 nuclear-armed powers. Geography here is not background. It is the entire argument. The strait separates mainland China from Taiwan's west coast, and it connects the East China Sea to the South China Sea, forming the central artery of maritime East Asia. Approximately 88 million barrels of oil move through the South China Sea annually. TSMC, Taiwan's semiconductor giant, produces roughly 90% of the world's most advanced chips. Those chips leave Taiwan on ships. Those ships transit corridors whose legal status is now the subject of live military contestation between the world's second and third largest economies. Disrupt the strait, and you do not merely threaten Taiwan. You threaten the supply chain architecture of the modern world. China's doctrine treats the Taiwan Strait as sovereign Chinese internal waters. Washington, Tokyo, Canberra, and London reject this claim entirely, treating the strait as international waters under the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea. This is not a technical disagreement between lawyers. It is a fundamental incompatibility over who controls the most economically critical maritime corridor on the planet. Every warship transit, American, Japanese, British, is not merely navigation. It is a live, kinetic argument about which legal framework governs this water. Until September 2024, Japan had not made that argument. Not once. For decades, Tokyo quietly deferred, allowing American and Allied warships to conduct freedom of navigation transits while the MSDF stood back, unwilling to absorb Beijing's predictable fury. That restraint was a strategic choice. It was also a strategic message. Japan was in the alliance, but it was not prepared to lead the confrontation. Then PM Takichi took office in October 2025, and on November 7th, standing before Japan's parliament, she broke 80 years of studied ambiguity in a single sentence. A Chinese blockade of Taiwan, she said, could by all means become a survival-threatening situation, invoking the precise legal terminology from Japan's 2015 security legislation that authorizes Japan to exercise collective self-defense, not individual defense of Japanese territory, collective defense, alongside an ally, against a third party. In a conflict, Japan was not directly attacked, and no sitting Japanese prime minister had ever said this, ever. Beijing understood immediately what it meant. China's consul general in Osaka responded by posting, then deleting, a message saying those who stick their dirty neck in must have it cut off. China then suspended tourism to Japan, banned seafood imports, cancelled over 1,900 flights in December alone, and on January 6, 2026, banned 800-plus dual-use items, including rare earth elements, from export to Japan. Japan depended on China for 63% of its rare earth imports in 2024. Those minerals go into EV motors, electronics, and the magnets inside F-35 fighter jets. Nomura Research Institute calculated that a 3-month ban would cost Japanese businesses 660 billion yen, $4.2 billion, and shave 0.11% off Japan's annual GDP, a full year. Nearly half a percentage point of GDP gone. Japan did not retract the statement. Takaichi did not apologize. Her approval rating held at 75%. That tells you something precise. The economic pain of Chinese coercion was supposed to force Tokyo back into ambiguity. It did not. And when economic coercion fails, the other instrument in Beijing's toolkit is military signaling. So China deployed it. Carrier group operations near Japan's southern islands in December, drone incursions near Yonaguni, publicized naval exercises threading through Japanese territorial corridors, and Japan's response to that military signaling was the Ikazuchi, Japan's southwestern island chain. The Ryukyu Islands, stretching from Kyushu toward Taiwan, puts Tokyo in a position no other ally occupies. Yonaguni Island sits 110 kilometers from Taiwan's coast. On a clear day, you can see Taiwan from its shore. Any Chinese military operation against Taiwan crosses through or over Japanese adjacent waters. There is no version of a Taiwan contingency in which Japan is not directly affected. Takaichi isn't posturing. She is doing arithmetic, and the arithmetic, when read through the geography, produces one conclusion that Beijing finds intolerable. Japan has decided that the cost of being unprepared for a Taiwan conflict is higher than the cost of Chinese economic retaliation. That decision is what the Ikazuchi was announcing, and the hardware now being assembled across the first island chain is the proof. Start with the destroyer itself. The JS Ikazuchi is a Murasom-class guided missile destroyer, a 4,550-ton warship equipped with the OYQ-9 combat data system, Harpoon anti-ship missiles, anti-submarine torpedoes, and a vertical launch system capable of firing Type 03 surface-to-air missiles. It is not a capital ship. It does not carry the firepower of an Aegis destroyer. What it carries is something more strategically loaded than missiles. It carries a flag. The flag of a nation that has not sent a warship through this corridor under its current prime minister. Until now, the choice of the Ikazuchi, a destroyer, not a frigate, not a patrol vessel, was deliberate. It is a frontline combatant. Its presence in the strait was Japan saying, "We are not sending a Coast Guard cutter for optics. We are sending a warship, a real one." And it sailed dark. The EYES transponder, the automatic identification system, the maritime equivalent of a commercial aircraft's transponder, the beacon that tells the world exactly where a ship is located, was switched off. This is standard military practice in contested environments, but it also means something doctrinal. It means the Ikazuchi was operating under military emissions control, the discipline of concealment that warships apply when they are not certain what is watching them, or when they want the other side to have to work to find them. Japan sent a military ship through militarily, not a diplomatic gesture dressed in naval uniform. The real thing, China's Eastern Theater Command knew immediately anyway. They deployed J-20 stealth fighters, China's most advanced operational combat aircraft, 5th generation, comparable in class to the American F-22 and CH-4 attack drones to shadow the vessel. They released the tracking footage on CCTV. The message from Beijing was calibrated. "We found you. We followed you, and we are showing the world we did. The implication underneath that message was equally deliberate. Next time, finding you is the easy part. Now zoom out from the destroyer to the full board. Within 96 hours of the Ekazuchi's transit, the following hardware was simultaneously in motion. China's carrier, Liaoning, hull number 16, carrying 8 J-15 fighters and 3 helicopters, visibly on deck, transited the Taiwan Strait, south to north, on April 20th, the first carrier transit of the strait since December. The Type 052DL destroyer Baotu and Type 054, a frigate, Huanggang, conducted exercises in the Yokohama Channel between Japan's Amami Oshima and Yokohama Island. Then, on April 21st, the Plain Navy announced the Type 076 amphibious assault ship Sichuan was departing Shanghai for the South China Sea. That last vessel requires particular attention, because it changes the conversation entirely. The Sichuan is China's first Type 076, a 40,000-ton warship with a full-length flight deck, a floodable well deck for landing craft and armored vehicles, and an electromagnetic aircraft launch system, or EMALS, the same catapult technology used on America's most advanced carriers. It can launch fixed-wing drones, potentially the GJ-11 Sharp Sword stealth combat drone and the WZ-7 high-altitude reconnaissance UAV, in addition to helicopters. It completed its maiden sea trials in November 2025. It is expected to be formally commissioned into the PLA Navy in 2026. It is, in plain terms, a drone carrier with amphibious assault capability, a vessel designed specifically to project air power and landing forces simultaneously. In a Taiwan contingency, it functions as a forward aviation hub that stays beyond the range of Taiwan's densest missile defenses, while launching UAVs to probe those defenses from outside lethal range. Beijing sent it toward the exact waters where Japan is conducting Balikatan. That is not coincidence. That is counter-programming. Meanwhile, on the Japanese side of the board, the hardware being deployed tells an equally striking story. Japan's 1,400 troops at Balikatan include Type 88 surface-to-ship missile units, positioned in northern Luzon, the part of the Philippines that faces directly toward the Taiwan Strait. The Type 88 has a range of approximately 100 kilometers. Yonaguni Island is 110 kilometers from Taiwan. The math is deliberate. Japan is rehearsing, on foreign soil, the exact engagement geometry it would need in a Taiwan contingency, and it is firing live rounds, sinking a decommissioned vessel off the coast of northern Pauai, for the first time ever outside Japanese territory, the first time since 1945. The hardware is moving, the doctrine has shifted, and the gap where crisis management should exist is empty. There are two paths forward. Neither is clean. Path 1. Japan holds the line and the deterrence bet pays off. Tokyo continues its normalization sequence. The Yonaguni missile deployment proceeds on schedule. Balikatan becomes an annual baseline, not an exception. The alliance web Washington, Tokyo, Manila, Canberra, Seoul, London becomes dense enough that Beijing's cost-benefit calculation on Taiwan shifts. China concludes that the price of military action in the Taiwan Strait now includes direct Japanese military response, potentially alongside American, Australian, and Filipino forces, and that price is too high. Upside, deterrence holds. Taiwan retains de facto independence. The global semiconductor supply chain remains intact. Downside, the normalization sequence has no agreed endpoint. Each Japanese step invites a Chinese counterstep. With no crisis communication channel between Tokyo and Beijing, no military hotline, no established de-escalation protocol, one miscalculation in the Yokohama Channel triggers an escalation sequence that neither side designed and neither side can stop. Path 2. Beijing forces are reckoning before the wall is finished. China assesses that Japan's southwestern island chain, once fully armed, closes the corridor China needs for any Taiwan operation. The window, the period before that wall is complete, is measured in years, not decades. The Type 03 missiles reach Yonaguni by fiscal 2030. The electronic warfare units deploy in 2026. The clock is running. Under this path, China accelerates its pressure campaign to the level of maximum coercive force, full rare earth embargo, complete severance of the tourism and trade relationship, military exercises that are explicit rehearsals of Taiwan contingency scenarios. The goal is not to start a war. The goal is to make Japan blink. Upside for Beijing. If it works, Japan returns to strategic ambiguity. Downside: if Japan absorbs the pain and Takeichi's 75% approval rating holds, Beijing has spent its coercive leverage and received nothing. A China that has demonstrated the full scope of its economic weapon and failed to achieve its objective is a China whose deterrent credibility has been materially degraded. There is no clean version. There is only the version that ends on terms one side can enforce, and right now, neither side is certain which side that is. I have spent 48 hours inside this data. Here is my assessment. Japan is not bluffing. The deployment sequence is too costly, too legally structured, and too operationally specific to be theater. Takeichi invoked a precise legal term, Sonritsu, Kikijitai, survival-threatening situation, that has defined consequences under Japanese law. You do not invoke that term for domestic optics. You invoke it because you intend to be bound by it. The Type 88 missiles fired in the Philippines this week are not a rehearsal for a hypothetical. They are a capability demonstration for a contingency Japan's government has now publicly named. Tokyo has chosen its side. The only remaining question is whether Beijing believes it. My read: Beijing does not yet fully believe it, and that gap between Japanese resolve and Chinese perception is the most dangerous space on the board right now. Path 1. Japan holds, deterrence accumulates, the wall gets built. Path 2. Beijing forces the reckoning before the wall is finished. Which holds on why? Drop your tactical read below. If this briefing gave you something the networks didn't, subscribe. Tomorrow's analysis is already being assembled.